Welcome back, literarians. This is the Literary Lori YouTube channel, and I am Literary Lori. I am so glad you're here for another installment of Black Literary History Month. Yes, every single day in February, I am here on this channel sharing the story of an incredible Black writer born in February. Because I'm Black and bookish, instead of Black History Month, I celebrate Black Literary History Month. And I want more people to do the same thing, so I am showcasing one Black writer every single day in February, and not just a regular Black writer, but an incredible Black writer, just to prove my point of how many incredible Black writers from the whole globe of Blackness are born in February, so that perhaps, I don't know who's in charge, but we can get the official month of the official calendar to say somewhere that February from henceforth, I don't know if I'm using the word henceforth right, is Black Literary History Month. All right, so let's get into today's incredible writer. And I remember I did promise that we are not only talking about Black American writers, we're going global. Today's author is none other than Paul Gilroy, who is a Black British writer, okay? So Paul Gilroy was born on this day, February 16th, 1950 something. Those writers who are still alive, in case you hadn't noticed, I'm not giving their exact date of birth because they might not want you to know. And if you want to, you go Google it. But I'm just saying he was born in the mid-1950s on February 16th. So happy birthday to Paul Gilroy. If you're not familiar with his work, you should. Paul Gilroy is considered, I'm going to just read literally what the Guardian newspaper said. They said Paul Gilroy is, quote, widely regarded as the country's preeminent scholar of race, culture, and nationalism. It's a status that he has acquired slowly, without fanfare, through a steady drip of books, essays, and lectures, rather than dramatic public interventions, unquote. So Paul Gilroy is a writer, he's a scholar, he was a journalist, he's an author. I like to say, is like a modern day W.E.B. Du Bois. He's a public intellectual who knows how to use his words. So let's get into my favorite thing, which are the fun facts about these different writers. And today I'm going to give you kind of a fun facts backstory of his, maybe like a highlights reel of his life. And then I'm going to share two of his most important books that you maybe have heard of. And if you haven't, would be the books that you'd want to read of his to understand who this man, what his contributions to the world of letters has been. All right, so let's get to it. Fun fact number 1. So Paul Gilroy was raised in East London, and in growing up, he had neighbors who were all different types of immigrants, other people of color, refugees, and even Holocaust survivors. So it was from a very early age that Paul Gilroy was, exposed to and understood the true diversity and similarities of the human condition. Fun fact number 2, we often talk about the early lives of the writers that the writers I've been profiling. Most of them were eager readers and early writers even, and Paul Gilroy was no different. In fact, his mother was a novelist, so that's got to help, right? So Paul's mother was Guyanese. Her name is Beryl Gilroy. She is a novelist, and his father was a white Englishman who was a scientist. So he grew up in a household where books were readily available, and books and writing and reading was part of what he grew up seeing both of his parents do. I heard him on a podcast say that he wasn't really a particularly good student because he didn't always go to school because he didn't always want to. And if he didn't want to, his mom didn't make him. He would instead just stay home and read. So not to say he was self-taught, but his love of reading was supported by his family, and he understood and fell in love with the written word. All right. Also, I read also that because London at this time when he was growing up was rife with virulent racism. And because he was mixed race, he had a black mom, a white dad, he had a mother who was Guyanese, like there was a lot of reasons why people would pick on him, call him names. Racial slurs were very common. And so reading and, staying home was also a refuge from that. So again, he loved reading from a very early age, but apparently his first kind of passion and love was music, and he played in a lot of bands and originally thought he would be a musician. But I heard him say that he was always the worst musician in every band he was ever in, but super passionate about it. And it was his friends who were like, dude, you're getting your PhD or whatever. Like, why don't you stay in that lane? But his first love was music, which leads us to fun fact number 4. Paul Gilroy's kind of recognition of the commonality and the Black experience really came through music. He said he was really moved by a concert. He heard Curtis Mayfield, a Black American musician, playing live in the UK, and was, really struck at what he was hearing. He also had connections with Bob Marley. So he's really putting together these connections of musicians from different places of let's say the African diaspora, Black Americans, Caribbeans, Black people in the UK, and really starts to put together is starting to really consider what this kind of commonality in the Black experiences was through music. All right, fun fact number 5. Before becoming an academic and a scholar, Paul Gilroy actually worked for the government, for the city government, and he was a journalist, a freelance journalist working for alternative publications, music magazines, culture magazines, and some political publications as well. He was a columnist for some different publications. So he was really a man about the world, right? I mean, he was a man about the streets, about the people before he entered academia, which is important. Fun fact number 6. Once he got into academia, though, that's where he found his footing, where he found his place, where he really felt that he could do his best work. And he taught at many different universities throughout the UK, including Goldsmiths, the University of London. But what was interesting is that with his interest in race and Blackness, apparently he didn't feel that he was taken seriously. He didn't feel that he could really advance in the UK. And apparently he was not the only one. A lot of people, a lot of scholars left the UK because they couldn't find the type of support for their work. And at this point, he told The Guardian, quote, "Even to be interested in race, let alone to assert its centrality to British nationalism, is to sacrifice the right to be taken seriously." So, what did he do? He came to the United States. Fun fact number 7. From 1999 to 2005, Paul Gilroy, again, he's like, can't do what I want to do, can't be taken seriously in the UK. He goes to the US and he gets a job at this place called Yale. Yes, he didn't go slumming it in the US. Not only did he come to Yale, he came to Yale and he was the chair of the Department of African American Studies and the Charlotte Marion Seydon Professor of Sociology and African American Studies. So he had a dual appointment. He's heading up the African American Studies Department at Yale from 1999 to 2005. So again, not being taken seriously in the UK or not seeing like a path for advancement. Then comes to the US, doesn't quite fit in, doesn't find what he's looking for, and it comes back to the UK. In 2012, from 2012 to 2019, he was working at King's College London, where he put his US experience to good use because in the UK at that point, he was a professor of American and English literature at King's College London, right? So in 2014, he was elected a fellow of the Royal Society of Literature. And then in 2019, he became the founding director of the Sarah Parker Redmond Center for the Study of Racism and Racialization. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. Racialization at University College London. And if you have time, I don't want to do such a segue, go look up Sarah Parker Redmond. Amazing Black woman, American, who ends up being a doctor in Italy. Amazing story, but it's not his story. So, but I do want you all to know that name, and I'll put a link to the center and what kind of incredible work they're doing at the Sarah Parker Redmond Center in the description below. So that's kind of the story of Paul Gilroy's professional life. But I want to now talk about the two books that really, if you've heard of Paul Gilroy, if you haven't heard of Paul Gilroy, you've probably heard of his books. Book one, that his first book that he wrote in 1987 was called There Ain't No Black in the Union Jack. And that was a study of racism in Britain, as you can imagine by the title. And that, again, was really a breakout book for him. It was his first book, and it really put him on the map as somebody who talks about and thinks about blackness in the UK. But it was his 1993 book called The Black Atlantic, Modernity and Double Consciousness. It is the book that everybody associates Paul Gilroy with. And it is the study of the African diaspora in it has transformed the study of the African diaspora in the humanities and social sciences. And essentially, when I'm sure you've heard that concept, the Black Atlantic, referring to the people of the African diaspora who were, spread out because of the transatlantic slave trade. So we're talking about the people from Africa to the Americas, to the Americas, to the Caribbean, and understanding that there is a cultural connection between all of them. And what Gilroy is describing is also not just the connections between the diaspora communities, but that all of those, the Black Atlantic, that those communities had a significant influence and impact on the Western world. Okay. And so, and I'm simplifying that so very much. But when you hear that term, the Black Atlantic, that was his phrase, that was his study, and that was his definition. And we're still using it today. And it is a term that not just academics, but anybody in the cultural world uses the term and understands what the Black Atlantic refers to, thanks to Paul Gilroy. Even I recently had a residency in Ghana at the Library of Africa and the African Diaspora, and it's literally called the Black Atlantic Residency. So again, I think if you've heard that term, but you haven't heard of Paul Gilroy, now is the time to go look up that book, The Black Atlantic by Paul Gilroy. There are art exhibits, like everything goes back to that book. So again, if you don't know Paul Gilroy, you've probably heard that term, check out the book. And I'm going to leave you with the prize that Paul Gilroy won in 2019. He won the Holberg Prize, which is often called the Nobel Prize for the Humanities. That was, think of it as the Nobel Prize for the Humanities. It comes with a $700,000 prize money for it. And this was crazy to me that Gilroy won that prize in 2019, and not a single British newspaper covered his win. What does that tell you about how he's appreciated in his own country? So again, if you haven't heard of Paul Gilroy, I hope that this video makes you go look him up, go look up his work. But I wanted to finish with when he accepted that award, the Holberg Award, he has to give a lecture, an acceptance speech, and his lecture was called Refusing Race and Salvaging the Human. What's interesting, that even though Paul Gilroy is very much focused on the Black experience, the Black Atlantic, he considers himself a humanist, and his goal is for human beings to move beyond race. And because of that, some people are like, I'm not sure I'm on his side. I'm not sure I agree with that idea, being a humanist. But he gave this example, and for real, this is what I'm going to say, what I'm going to leave you with. He gave the example from Oluwado Equiano's autobiography. this is if yeah, and Oleado Equiano was a slave who became free, lived in the UK, traveled all over the world, and in his autobiography he talks about a time when he was on a ship and it was floundering, and the white crew was they were all about to go down with the ship. They didn't know what to do. And it was Oleado, who I don't know if he was enslaved at that time still, but he took the control of the ship. He got it's not called a steering wheel, I don't know, but the ship steering wheel. He's working so hard that it was, quote, the skin was flayed from his hands. But because of his work, because of what he did, he saved the ship. And Gilroy said, Equiano's actions scrambled the ship's racial hierarchy. He was temporarily recognized as a kind of chieftain by the crew. And so basically he's saying that disasters can create the conditions in which we are forced to look beyond race towards our common humanity. And so what Gilroy is trying to say is that it is imperative to, quote, it is imperative to remain less interested in who or what we imagine ourselves to be than in what we can do for one another, both in today's emergency conditions and in the grimmer circumstances that surely await us, unquote. So Paul Gilroy has spent his life researching and trying to understand this concept of race, not so that we can stay stuck in it, but so that we can move beyond it. Whether you agree with him or not, his work is fascinating. It's truly thought-provoking, and he's still out there, thinking, writing, and researching. So it's not like he's dead and you gotta, think about it that way. But I do recommend that you look into his work. There's a lot of YouTube videos where he's speaking about his work, where he's being interviewed. And again, if you haven't read his books, check out The Black Atlantic and There Ain't No Black in the Union Jack. All right, I hope this video taught you something you didn't know, introduced you to someone you didn't know, or an amazing writer. And sorry, one last thing. We know Paul Gilroy because of his books. If he had just been a thinker and just talked, we wouldn't be talking about him right now. And so I want to always leave the writers watching something, and that is that this power of the written word, of being a thinker, is one thing, but being a thinker who puts his thoughts down on the page means that your ideas can be disseminated all over the world, which his are, right? You don't even have to agree with them, but he is part of the conversation about race, racism, and identity. So I hope that's helpful. I hope that's inspiring. I hope you come back tomorrow for yet another incredible story about another amazing Black writer born in February. Thanks, as always, for showing up, leaving comments, and, just being here and supporting this series. All right, see you tomorrow. Bye.